Since the time of Babylon, I've walked the earth, challenging the most venturesome of men. I am this sinuous creature, a killer cat, and I'm a woman, seductive, tantalizing, inviting a lover's caress. But to caress me is to play with death. I am the mystery woman of the ages, feline, fascinating. To know me is to know all my loves, all the lives I've lived, the deaths I've caused. I am the essence in woman that no man can resist. I am Cat Girl.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I've brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're gonna catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Thank you for joining us for American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we'll be digging our claws into the cursed bloodlines and feline fury of Catgirl from 1957.
Catgirl is directed by Alfred Shaughnessy, written by Lou Rusoff and Alfred Shaughnessy, produced by Herbert Smith and Lou Rusoff for Anglo Amalgamated Film Distributors and American International Pictures.
Catgirl stars Barbara Shelley as Leonora Johnson, Robert Ayres as Dr. Brian Marlowe, Kay Callard as Dorothy Marlowe, Ernest Milton as Edmund Brandt, Lilly Kann as Anna, Jack May as Richard Johnson.
It also stars Patricia Webster as Cathy, John Lee as Allan, Edward Harvey as the Doorman, Martin Boddey as Cafferty, John Watson as Roberts, and Selma Vasdias as the nurse. As the film opens, we have dramatic music, thunder, and a title, Catgirl. The credits play over tense string music.
It's a dark and stormy night in England. At a large house, an old man looks out the window as the lightning flashes outside. He closes the drapes and walks throughout the house. He pulls back a curtain, revealing a leopard in a cage. He tells the leopard that he must be patient and he can go out after his niece arrives, and she's due soon.
And then we cut to said niece, Leonora Johnson, who's staring into space in a pub as jaunty piano music plays and people dance. She tells her husband Richard, sitting next to her, that she dreads going to the house. She feels the heavy presence of her uncle already. She begs Richard to take her home, but Richard can only see her future inheritance and demands that she not antagonize her Uncle Moneybags. And Leonora is very bitter about this.
Among the people dancing behind them are Allan and Cathy, a couple of friends, and Leonora is planning on bringing them all with her to visit this house. Richard says that Allan and Cathy's presence will help alleviate any negative feelings Leonora might have, and Leonora tells Richard that she was supposed to be coming alone, but Richard thinks it'll be fine. He, after all, is Leonora's husband, so she can't be expected to come all alone. And Allan and Cathy, well, they liven any party they attend.
Leonora finally remembers escaping from her uncle's clutches and drinking her first gin and tonic in this very pub. The song ends, and Cathy and Allan come to Richard and Leonora's table to ask why they're not dancing. Richard slams Leonora for her morbid state of mind, so Allan drinks a toast to the happy couple, Leonora's money and Richard's capacity for spending it. Richard tells Allan to shut up.
Cathy asks Richard for a dance, but Allan says that he's up to the task after he refuels, which he does by chugging down a drink. Then he pushes Cathy back onto the dance floor and immediately steps on her feet.
A man comes up to Richard and Leonora's table. He knows Leonora, so she introduces him as Dr. Brian Marlowe to her husband, Richard Johnson. Richard takes this as his cue to go dance, but not before asking about the storm, which Brian says has died down. Richard says that they'll shove off soon then.
Richard excuses himself, and Leonora asks Brian to sit down. Dr. Brian asks Leonora what brings her to town on such a dark and stormy night. My uncle sent for me, Leonora explains. At this, Brian chuckles. Her uncle always hated him.
Leonora says that her uncle always hated anyone who was kind to her. She asks what he's doing there, and he says that he's going to his mother's house. Since she passed away, he and Dorothy have been using it as a weekend place. Leonora wants to know who's Dorothy, and Brian says that's his wife.
Then goes on to say that she hasn't seen him in 9 years.
And she wonders why he never replied to her letters, and he brushes her off and says that he was a busy med student.
Leonora asks Brian where he's practicing these days, in case she cuts herself. But Brian isn't that kind of doctor. He's a psychiatrist. But he says that if she knows of any wealthy neurotics running around, please let him know. He says he's got to go, but Leonora, looking at her husband dancing with Cathy, begs him to stay. Brian says he'll be missed, but he relents.
And now we're with Richard and Cathy. Richard's holding Cathy so tightly because they used to be a thing. He tries to kiss her right there on the dance floor, but she warns him not to. They're only 5 steps away from Leonora. He's convinced that Leonora only has eyes for her lost love, Brian, and Cathy says that she must get used to doing without him. Must you really? He asks as they dance off screen.
Back at the table, Brian gets up to leave, and he says that he'd like to get together with Leonora later so she can meet his wife, Dorothy. He leaves, and Cathy, Richard, and Allan go back to the table to gather their things so they can head to Leonora's uncle's house.
Leonora trails behind the others as they head to the car, looking less than thrilled at the trip. Allan's holding a bottle of booze, saying that he's taking his courage in both hands.
Now we're back at the old dark house, and Anna, the housekeeper, is walking through the halls with a cane. She goes to Edmund Brandt, the man we know as Leonora's uncle, who we saw earlier.
Edmund tells Anna that they're going out right now, and when his niece arrives, Anna is to show her to her room and say nothing to her. Anna says, what if she doesn't come? She will come, says Edmund. She has no choice.
Edmund tells her it is Leonora's destiny to be a Brandt, as it is her destiny to die as one.
Better she was never born, drones Anna, than to come back here to this.
Edmund goes to the leopard's cage and releases it. He and the leopard both step outside into the stormy night, just as the car containing the Johnsons, Allan, and Cathy pulls up. Leonora says she doesn't want to go into the house, but since she's the only one who was actually invited, she's got to be the first one at the door. She exits the car, and Allan quips that this looks like a training school for ghouls, and Cathy wants to know what she's doing here.
Well, she could have stayed home, the trollop.
Leonora has gone to the door, but she's just standing there. Richard knocks when he and the others join her on the porch. Anna opens the door and tells Leonora she was supposed to come alone.
Richard barges in past Leonora and starts assessing the value of the paintings on the wall. Leonora looks around silently. Anna says, who's he about Richard, and Leonora explains. She asks Anna to grab her cane and carry their cases upstairs, and then bring them some coffee.
Leonora inquires as to why her uncle isn't there to receive them, and Anna explains that he's gone out for a while. Meanwhile, Cathy, Allan, and Richard are exploring the room, looking at the books on the shelves. Leonora asks if the others heard something, but they haven't heard anything.
But we hear what she hears, and it sounds like a lion roaring, or it sounds like a big cat. Outside, the leopard's hunting, and it bags a bunny, but Edmund demands that he not eat his kill. The leopard looks kind of bummed at this.
Back inside, we see that Allan has made himself at home at the piano, while Cathy and Richard sit together nearby. Leonora is still nervously pacing by the door.
Cathy demands more light, so Richard flips on the lamp on the piano. Leonora demands he put it out. Cathy considers their absent host very rude for not being there, and then demands a drink.
Allan and Richard agree that they'd like one as well, and decide that there must be some drink somewhere in this old crypt, so Richard suggests he and Cathy take a look around, while Allan continues noodling on the piano. So Cathy and Richard find a door to the study, which may very well hold the booze they were looking for, but they can't get in, so they go outside to look for an alternative means of entry.
Outside, the leopard is nearby, watching as Richard starts kissing Cathy's neck. She allows it for a bit, but then stops him. Something about Leonora scares her. There's something wild and animalistic about her. Richard dismisses this as nonsense and says that Cathy needs a drink. Cathy says that if Leonora could see them right now, she'd kill them both, and then sinks into his embrace.
Richard continues nuzzling Cathy's neck, but they stop when they notice a leopard sitting near them on the porch. Edmund is there too. He tells the cat to leave them alone, then he glares at the couple and asks who they are. Cathy explains that they're friends of Leonora's. I happen to be Leonora's husband, says Richard. Indeed, says Edmund. Then he tells them to use the front door to get back into the house.
They comply, and Edmund enters through the side door. Inside, Leonora stands still as a statue as Richard and Cathy return. Then she spins around to see her Uncle Edmund standing there. So you're back, she asks. You were instructed to come alone, he crabs. She repeats that she asked them to come, and then he just spins around and leaves without saying anything to anyone. Allan snarks on the hospitality offered here. Cathy says, if that's your uncle, you can keep him.
Edmund goes to Anna and informs her that he shall speak with his niece tonight while the others are asleep. Anna then goes back to the group and tells them that their rooms are ready. Miss Leonora will have her regular room. The other 3 rooms are in the west wing. What? Says Richard, who apparently planned on spending the night in the same room as his new wife. You weren't expected, shrugs Anna.
She's not wrong. Anyway, you think he'd be happy to have a room where he could have better access to Cathy and not have to worry about waking Leonora. In her room, Leonora sleeps fitfully. She hears the roar of the leopard. Anna barges into her room and demands that Leonora come down to see her uncle now. Leonora tries to defer to a morning meeting, but Anna tosses her nightclothes and demands she get dressed. She's naked, and come downstairs immediately.
As Leonora gets dressed, Anna watches and tells Leonora she's grown to be a beautiful woman.
Ick. She's ogling her.
And once dressed, Anna leads Leonora down the stairs.
Alone in his study, Edmund is reading us the terms and conditions of the family cat curse. You get to hand it off to your closest family relative at age 70, and then Edmund hears a tapping on the door and then goes to open it.
Edmund opens the door and dismisses Anna.
He tells her he's very grateful for her service. She says nothing, but kisses his hand before she scuttles off.
Then Edmund tells Leonora to come with him, but she refuses. She says she wasn't allowed in that room when she was a child, and she certainly doesn't want to go in there now. But Edmund tells her that it's time she learned the secret of that room. Edmund pulls Leonora into the study, and she is shocked to see a line of taxidermied leopards and wildcats. They're all displayed as eating something, and the one on the end is eating a guy.
The last one is devouring a mannequin. She calls him mad. He says if only it were madness, then the curse would die with him. But instead, he must pass it to her, his nearest blood relative. She's the daughter of his only brother. The curse is to have the form and intellect of a man, or a woman, I guess, yet the cunning and bloodlust of one of these creatures. He points to a little statuette that appears to be a man melting into a big cat. It's the symbol of his affliction, he says, and now it shall pass from his blood to hers, just as it has for generations for the past 700 years.
Leonora walks over to the bookshelf and runs her finger over the books. You've been reading too many of these books, she says. Edmund says that after tonight, there will be 2 of her, as there are 2 of him, distinctly separate but never apart. Leonora has heard enough and she demands to be let out of this room, but Edmund brings her to the leopard's cage and insists that she touch it.
She refuses, but he makes her do it, and as she pets the leopard's head, apparently that completes the transfer. Now she is he, and he is her, and she already feels different. And if you catch this, she covers her eyes, and when she takes them away, she now has Vulcan eyebrows, pointing upward. You missed that the first 2 times we watched it.
Edmund tells Leonora that her friends must leave in the morning. But Richard is my husband, says Leonora. Edmund warns her that she must not bear children, lest they inherit the curse. The line is this close to dying out. Leonora tries to run from the room once again, and Edmund tells her that she cannot escape her destiny. He says that she is chained to this room for the rest of her life.
She goes outside anyways, and then tears off through the trees. Edmund goes to the leopard and says farewell, then he releases the leopard.
Edmund picks up the small statuette and takes it outside with the leopard. My soul is no longer yours, he says. Do as you will. And Edmund smashes the statuette on the ground. Then Edmund backs into the wall as the leopard pounces on him, tearing at his throat. Leonora watches from nearby as her uncle is mauled, and she looks strangely thrilled by this.
She goes to his body. Inside we see that the commotion has also awoken Richard and Cathy at the same time, who run outside. Then Allan and Anna join them to see the old man's mutilated corpse.
As they run to the door, Anna bows her head in sorrow. She knows what's up.
The leopard lies nearby, cleaning itself. Leonora touches the body of her uncle, pulling off some torn fabric. She seems both horrified and thrilled in equal measure, but it all proves too much for her and she faints.
The next day, the police are at the scene, and looking at all the cat paraphernalia around the room, the detective sergeant decides that Edmund got just what he asked for. He and the other policemen discuss how they found the girl with the blood on her hands in the woods.
And he says that he hopes they find that cat. The other officer says that he put out a 3-county warning for the animal, and then a car arrives. It's Dr. Brian Marlowe. They both think that this case calls for a head doctor. The second officer thinks that the niece was around the bend, just like her uncle.
Anna is answering the door, and she lets in Dr. Marlowe. Anna says that she's glad he could come. Leonora was calling for him when they found her. Brian goes to Leonora and asks how she's doing. Leonora says that she was out in the woods trying to get away from the house when her uncle was killed. She says that it was just like he said. He willed the leopard to kill him.
She ran into the woods to get away from the house when suddenly she felt like a savage and wanted to kill something and feel blood on her hands. She became what he was. Dr. Brian ignores her. He wants to give her a sedative.
Dr. Brian is preparing a hypodermic and says he'll give her something to settle her nerves.
She placidly allows it, all while explaining that she is the leopard and the leopard is she. He tells her to get some sleep and touches her arm. She likes that.
She says that having him here with her makes her feel like she used to.
She begs him to stay, confessing that she never stopped loving him. He tells her to be a good girl and go to sleep. Still grasping his hand, she tells him to send the others away. He tells her she needs the company to cheer her up. He obviously hasn't spent much time with Richard.
Dr. Brian says he'll come by later this evening to check on Leonora, and maybe he'll bring Dorothy along so that they can meet each other. What for? Asks Leonora. To prove you're happily married? To make me stop loving you? Brian tells her to go to sleep. He leaves, and Leonora needs the bedding.
She does snuggle into the pillow like a kitty cat would. Later, Richard and Leonora are in formal gear, but Leonora isn't in a party mood. She hears the leopard roaring. Richard tells her that it's nonsense. She tells him that he should go now, but Richard says he's there for better or worse, remember? And he's also there for richer and even richer, he hopes. After all, it's his house now, right?
Leonora starts to warn him what might happen, but she stops when she hears the leopard growling outside. Richard tells her to come back inside when she's ready. He says they found the liquor cabinet, and Allan's high as a kite.
In the study, there's a knock at that side door. Leonora opens it, and it's Dr. Brian. She lets him in, and he starts combing through Uncle Edmund's books, finding one about lycanthropy. Weird stuff, he says. But Leonora says that her uncle really was a werewolf, where a leopard might have been more appropriate, but that's not what she said. She says at night his soul entered the body of the leopard. Dr. Brian claims that was all in his mind, but Leonora doesn't believe that.
But what Dr. Brian is going to prescribe is a clean sweep. He says they need to get rid of all of these books, and he starts by reading and pulling pages out of the family history. He calls them fairy tales created by the mind of a demented old man. He goes to throw the pages into the fireplace, but Leonora pulls him back, shouting, "No!" Brian smacks her and then throws the pages into the fire. Leonora apologizes, and Brian relents and says he was treating her symptoms and not the cause. Leonora wonders if she might be going mad, but Brian is sympathetic. All that's been going on, the death of her uncle, this room, they've all contributed to her current condition. He says the best thing for her will be to leave this house. He asks her to come out into the hall to meet his wife, Dorothy. Leonora doesn't want to, but Dr. Brian thinks it's important that Leonora face reality. So they go out into the hall, and Dr. Brian introduces his wife. "Hello," says Dorothy. Leonora looks at her, looks back at Brian, then walks away.
Rude. Dorothy declares, "That was charming." She says Leonora looked like she wanted to claw her eyes out. Dr. Brian says that she's a very disturbed girl on the verge of psychosis. On the verge? Asks Dorothy.
"I've got to help her," says Brian. They leave, bumping into Allan on the way out. Allan returns to the piano, and Leonora comes down the stairs. "Where's Richard?" she asked. Allan tells her he said he's gone for a walk with Cathy, or something.
Leonora goes to the door, leaving Allan to his drink. She goes through the woods to find Richard and Cathy making out on the lawn. The leopard, now under Leonora's command, roars, and Cathy hears it.
Richard doesn't hear anything, and he coaxes Cathy back down on the ground. But Cathy insists she feels like someone is watching them. She jumps up as she hears the sound of the growling again. She starts to run, but turns to see Richard getting mauled by the leopard. Leonora stands nearby, the voice of her uncle telling her of the family curse echoing in her head.
I guess Richard collected her inheritance after all. Later, the cops have returned to question Leonora. He offers her his condolences. She claims that she killed her husband, but the detective insists it was the leopard. Leonora demands to be arrested, but the detective tells her to calm down. Cathy was an eyewitness to the animal attack. Leonora says that she would have torn Cathy up too, glaring at her husband's lover.
The detective inspector tells her that Dr. Marlowe is on his way there, and he'll give her something for her nerves. "He'll understand," says Leonora. Cathy wants Allan to take her home, but Allan doubts that there will be a train at this hour. The detective inspector advises them to wait until morning. It's best to stay indoors at night, what with a wild leopard running around outside.
And then Allan suggests that they could take Richard's car, and Leonora agrees. Cathy walks past Leonora to go upstairs and get her things, and apologizes, sort of, to Leonora. She says that Richard made her go for that walk. At this, Leonora pounces on Cathy, tearing at her dress and hair.
The detective inspector pulls Leonora off Cathy and tells Cathy to go up and get packed, and then tells Leonora to calm herself down.
Dr. Brian arrives, and the cops leave her to him. He tells Leonora that he will drive her to London tomorrow. He's putting her in a sanatorium for a while. She wonders why not a lunatic asylum. Dr. Brian says that Leonora's not irreversibly insane. She's just run down.
Leonora thinks that, yes, that might be it. Maybe she just needs to clear her head. And they both agree that this is the best thing for her right now.
Brian says that this is a nightmare, a sick delusion, and nothing more. And Leonora wants to believe this. He tries to leave, but she wants him to stay. She loves him. He tells her not to cling on to her memories, but to face her fears.
Dr. Brian leaves, and Anna steps out of the shadows and tells Leonora that she mustn't go with him tomorrow. She is cursed, just as her uncle was, as was his father. Leonora says Anna is insane and that she spent too much time alone in this house with her uncle, and that she's going to London tomorrow. "Do as you wish," says Anna. "The curse will follow you." And Leonora commands Anna to go to her room. Anna nods and does as she's told.
The next morning, Dr. Brian and Dorothy arrived at the house to pick up Leonora. Leonora spooks Dorothy by sneaking up behind her as she's standing outside the car.
Dr. Brian comes back to the car and says that no one answered the door. "Anna's left me," says Leonora.
Brian suggests that the two women ride in the back together and get chummy, but Dorothy immediately nixes that idea by feigning car sickness. And that suits Leonora just fine, as does Brian calling her Lee for old time's sake. And then everyone gets in the car and they drive off, away from the house, for an extremely awkward drive into town, and we see that there's no leopard following them.
Leonora has been admitted to the sanatorium and given a room. She's given clothes to wear, and she falls into the bed and starts to cry. That night, she awakens to the growling of the leopard outside of her window. She goes to the window and sees the leopard prowling around outside. She looks down at her hands and sees that they're turning into claws. And then she turns into a cat girl, I guess?
Her hands and face are morphing into a human-leopard hybrid. The next morning, Leonora is lying on the floor of her room. The window is open, furniture is askew, bedding is thrown on the floor. Brian and a nurse come in, and Brian chastises her. She asks if he believes her now, and he doesn't know what she means.
"Believe what?" he asks. "Look at my face, my hands." Dr. Brian asks her to look into the mirror and show him what he's supposed to be seeing. She looks into the mirror and explains that she had turned into a beast. The leopard called to her last night and tried to get her out of the room. She points at the bedding strewn about the floor. "Could a normal woman have done this?" "A deranged one could," says Dr. Brian. "Has, in fact." But Leonora was positive that last night she was an animal.
Brian tells her to snap out of it. He sits her down on the bed, with her naked back all scratched up by something, facing us. Brian tells Leonora that her physical exam reveals she was in an abnormal mental state.
Leonora insists that she's in a rational state of mind, yet contends that she did become a leopard. She saw it in the mirror. Brian says her delusional mind created that image. "Then explain why the leopard is always nearby. I hear it all the time," says Leonora. Brian says he doesn't hear anything. It only comes at night, Leonora says sheepishly. Brian says, fine, I'll come back tonight, and you can show me then. And Leonora is relieved that Brian believes her, but Brian's like, I didn't say that. They sit on the bed, and Leonora takes his hand and confesses that she always feels safe with him. Now, Leonora, says Brian, if you make this personal, I can't help you. He promises to come back tonight and leaves her with the nurse. That night, a security guard is patrolling the perimeter of the sanatorium with a flashlight. The leopard growls from nearby.
Brian comes into her room and turns on the light. She asks him to turn it off again. He asks for a demonstration of her powers. She warns him that if she does, that someone will die. Brian tells her to make that leopard come to the window. She goes to the window, but commands the leopard to kill. Outside, the leopard approaches that security guard. The guard shines his flashlight into the leopard's face, and inside, Leonora complains of the light. There is no light, says Brian. Outside, the leopard has backed off because of the flashlight. Brian once again tries to tell Leonora that she's imagining things. Leonora says that the cat is part of her, hiding her hands behind her back. He asks her to prove it, and she says, look at me. He turns on the light, but she looks normal. But she's still hiding her hands. She says she can't show them to him because they become claws. He takes her hands, and she hides her head in shame. Are you satisfied? She asks. I am. Are you? Says Brian. She slowly turns her head to see that her hands are normal, and she is surprised by this. She could swear they turned to claws as they were talking. Then why aren't they now? Asks Brian. This only happens when you're alone, doesn't it? Shock brought you into this state, and shock will bring you out of it. He tells her that he's taking her out of there to mix with normal people. Is that safe? She says. Brian says that he'll take the chance that other people may die. Nice guy. He says that he's going to let his wife babysit her tomorrow, take her shopping, to lunch, and a movie, and later they'll all get dinner together. He tells her to pack her things. He's getting her a hotel, and Dorothy will collect her tomorrow for a girls' day out. This sounds good to Leonora, who will do just about anything to spend time with Brian. Brian tells her to get a good night's sleep. He leaves, and Leonora immediately begins prepping for her date with Brian the next evening. At Dr. Brian and Dorothy's flat, Brian gives Dorothy her assignment, spend the day with Lee against her will, and note all her reactions for him, for free and without anybody helping her. He's really bossy and not a very good listener. She looks at her bird in his cage and quips, the canary watching the cat, and then Brian gives her some tactical advice. He tells Dorothy to stay in crowded areas, and there will be nothing to worry about. Dorothy admits she's afraid. When she says she's afraid, Brian poo-poos this and begs her to help him out this one time. She agrees, and he pats her on the head and calls her a good girl. And Brian says he'll be home at 8:30, and they can all have that dinner together. Towards the end of their day together, Dorothy and Leonora stop at a cafe for tea. Leonora admires the velvet drapes and says she wants to be wrapped in velvet when she dies. That's a pleasant thought, says Dorothy as she passes a cup to Leonora. Leonora continues that she might like to curl up in velvet and she drifts into silence as Dorothy continues sipping her tea. It's raining and Leonora's creeping her out, so Dorothy wants this to end and tries to rush Leonora through her tea. Leonora notices this and asks Dorothy what's the matter, staring at her intently, but Dorothy refuses to meet her gaze. At Brian and Dorothy's flat, Leonora is in a robe drying off her hair after getting a soaking that day. She sees the birdcage and eyes the bird like Sylvester looks at Tweety Bird. Dorothy comes in wearing a dress and asks Leonora to zip her up. Leonora puts her hands up as if to scratch Dorothy's back, and Dorothy asks, what's the matter? Is it stuck? Leonora says no and pulls up the zipper. While they're waiting for Brian to return, Dorothy says she can use a drink. She feels a chill. She goes to the bar, but there's no soda. Brian was supposed to buy some, and the whole rest of the movie hinges on this omission. She leaves the flat to go get some soda from someone else. After Dorothy has left, the phone rings and Leonora picks it up. It's Brian calling to check up on her. He asks if Dorothy is there, and Leonora tells him that she went out for some soda. Brian says that he's been tied up, so he tells her to have them both meet him at the Riverside Grill by the docks at 10. Dorothy knows the address. Leonora slyly agrees to this. Brian rings off. Leonora goes to the birdcage and opens it, scaring the bird as she reaches for it. Just then, Dorothy returns with the soda. She walks past the empty birdcage without noticing. Leonora says that Brian called and that he wants to meet her, but she gives Dorothy the wrong location. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Dorothy thinks it's strange that Brian wants them to meet him way out there. Leonora says that they could just stay in and talk, and Dorothy looks even less thrilled at this. She says they could telephone Brian, but Leonora has already lied that he's left the hospital. Dorothy walks past the birdcage again and this time notices that it's empty. Dorothy gasps, then tells Leonora that maybe Leonora might be more comfortable staying here while Dorothy goes out to meet Brian alone. Leonora says that perhaps Dorothy is right. All the while looming over her. Dorothy says she won't be long. It's late. She might have trouble getting a cab. Why not take the bus, suggests Leonora. Maybe I will, says Dorothy. She goes to the phone and calls her husband's answering service to let him know that she received his message and will meet him at the location Leonora gave her. Dorothy hurriedly grabs her things and tells Leonora she's sorry she won't be coming. Are you sorry? Says Leonora as Dorothy rushes out the door. Now we're in town somewhere. Two workers are walking down the street when they see a leopard chilling on top of a brick wall. They think it might be an escapee from the zoo and go to report it to the police. Then the bus comes by and Dorothy gets off. She's warned to be careful. These streets can get a little rough.
The bus drives away, and the leopard stalks nearby. Leonora is stalking nearby as well as Dorothy walks down the sidewalk.
Dorothy turns a corner, and there's a regular cat that crosses her path here. I don't know if that was an accident or intentional. Elsewhere, some police hear the report on their car radio about a loose leopard, and they start driving around to look for it. They quickly spot the leopard and turn to follow it.
Now we see Dorothy standing on the corner at Delaware Street, where she is supposed to be meeting Brian, according to the information she was given. And at the same time, Brian is at the restaurant where he intended to meet them, wondering what's keeping them. It's 10:15 and they should have been there by now. He asks for a phone and he's directed to a phone box.
And now Leonora's on the move. She walks up to Dorothy, who's annoyed that she's there. Leonora says she decided to come after all. The cops in the car stop to warn a beat cop about the leopard.
They say they spotted the leopard, but they lost him, and that they should all keep a lookout for it. Back at the restaurant, Brian calls his answering service and learns that Dorothy has gone to the corner of Delaware Street by the riverside. Now, why would she go there, wonders Brian.
Over on the corner, Dorothy asks Leonora where Brian could possibly be. Are you sure you got the message right, she asks. Yes, says Leonora. Then Dorothy gets real and asks Leonora, why do you hate me? Because I'm in love with Brian, she says, as if it weren't obvious. Dorothy counters that Brian loves her, his wife, and Leonora creepily says yes, until death parts you. Dorothy looks alarmed. Why did you say that, she asks, but seeing Leonora's face, decides not to wait any longer.
All things considered, Dorothy decides she'd rather be home than out here in the dark with Leonora.
Leonora says she will stay, and what should she tell Brian when he arrives? Tell him I've gone home, says Dorothy, as she turns and leaves.
Elsewhere in the area, the police are still looking for the leopard. They keep catching sight of it, but they can't keep track of it. Outside the restaurant, Brian asks the doorman for directions to Delaware Street. The doorman gives them, but warns that there's a leopard sighting in the area, and you probably should be careful. Brian gets into his car to head to the area, where we see the leopard is still stalking.
We see some cops get out of a car, armed with rifles, to look for the big cat. Now we're back with Dorothy, who realizes she's being pursued and starts to run for it. Leonora is following her, kicking off her shoes for stealth, and then she sends her leopard self after Dorothy.
Dorothy runs around a corner and stops and calls out, "Is that you, Leonora?" "Kill, kill," Leonora commands the leopard, her eyes wide. The leopard pounces, and Dorothy screams. But just then, a car screeches to a halt after slamming into the leopard. The car backs away, with the cat stuck to the grill, and Leonora falls to the ground. Brian gets out of the car and goes to Dorothy. They embrace as the police patrol cars pull up. "Oh, Brian," sobs Dorothy. "It was Leonora. She tried to kill me. She was completely savage." "I know," says Brian, "but you're all right now. She'll have to be put away again."
An unseen cop tells Brian to come see this. It's Leonora dead in front of his car. He takes her pulse, then lets her hand drop heavily to the ground. The cops say that it looks like Leonora was hit by a car, subtly accusing Brian of being responsible, which he angrily denies. He only hit the leopard.
Things become more complicated when a piece of Leonora's raincoat is found on Brian's bumper. They wanted to explain how it got there if he didn't run her down. Brian says that if he tried to explain what happened, they'd run him in for observation. Let's just say it had to do with the conquest of mind over matter, and leave it at that.
Cop says, well, that's okay, and asks him to leave his car there. They'll have it cleaned for him. Must be nice to be a rich white male. Brian promises his wife everything will be okay now. Plus, they're going to get a ride home from Scotland Yard. Isn't that neat?
As they pull out, we find ourselves back at the now unoccupied house, where the echoes of its guests and residents reveal that all this was pretty much Brian's fault.
As in flashback, we're reminded about the curse ending with Leonora's death, her love for Brian, and his terrible bedside manner. And that's the end.
You're listening to the American International Podcast, and we're discussing Catgirl from 1957.
Catgirl was the first British-U.S. co-production for American International Pictures. They made the film with Anglo Amalgamated, which had distributed many of AIP's films in the UK. AIP's contribution to the budget was $25,000, with more funds coming from something called the Eadie Levy, a fund of money collected from a tax on movie tickets meant to help British film producers, but which American producers had access to as well, provided they met the minimum standards necessary to qualify for it.
Production on Catgirl was announced in the LA Evening Citizen News on June 1st, 1957. Catgirl was shot at Beaconsfield Studios, England, as a co-production between Insignia Films Limited, a British studio, and Malibu Productions, a subsidiary of American International Pictures.
An article published in The Hollywood Reporter in May of 1957 listed Lynn Tracy as the female lead. However, Barbara Shelley was the one cast in the role. This was her first starring role in an English feature film. Previously, she had only worked in Italian cinema productions. According to John Hamilton in his book Witches, Bitches, and Banshees, The British Films of American International Pictures, Shelley was the producer's first and only choice to play the role.
AIP's Lou Rusoff wrote the screenplay and also received his first producing credit for the film. The script was originally entitled Wolf Girl, according to Mark McGee's Faster and Furiouser book, and another source says the movie was inspired by Val Lewton's Cat People. Director
Alfred Shaughnessy wrote in his autobiography, Both Ends of the Candle, that he thought the script was ludicrous. and rewrote it as a psychological thriller wherein the lead character Leonora Johnson, Barbara Shelley, only believes that she is transforming into a monster. According to him, quote, Rusoff listened patiently to my arguments, but it soon became clear that he could not care less what I did with the script. He had been paid for it and was mainly interested in getting his first day of principal photography money and enjoying his trip to London away from Mrs. Rusoff. Although Barbara Shelley thought the script changes constituted an improvement, the AIP team did not. When Arkoff and Nicholson first saw the film, they were furious. According to Paul Blaisdell, as told in the book Paul Blaisdell Monster Maker, Samuel Arkoff said, "We can't even release this picture. It's so awful. Where's the monster?" Jim Nicholson called Paul Blaisdell and said, "This picture's in terrible shape, Paul. There's nothing scary in it at all." He gave Blaisdell 2 days to create a furry cat mask and claws to splice into the film's finale for its U.S. release. Blaisdell used a foam-covered blank mask and a pair of winter gloves covered in dark paint and crepe hair to create the effect. Blaisdell was the one wearing the mask and gloves in the insert shots. In the rush to get the shot, the camera focus was not set correctly. Blaisdell attended the premiere with Bob and Cathy Burns, and on seeing the effect on screen said, "Look at that, will you? It looks awful." Bob suggested perhaps they wanted an arty soft focus effect. Blaisdell said, "Bullshit. It's just sloppy filmmaking, pure and simple." Blaisdell also was disappointed at how little footage of his cat mask actually wound up in the finished film. The added shots comprised only a matter of seconds. Blaisdell took the mask and claws home with him afterwards and used them to make some home movies with Bob Burns at Blaisdell's Topanga Canyon home, but the two weren't able to achieve the intended effect either. The cat mask wound up being one of the props that got destroyed in the fiery climax of the AIP's 1958 film How to Make a Monster. A Bengal leopard named Big Chief Horrible Noise, or Chiefy for short, played the cat in Catgirl. Chiefy was rescued from a trap as a 7-week-old cub and raised as a house pet by the wife of an Indian tea planter. When Chiefy was 4 months old, he was taken to the UK and given to Frank Farrar, the curator of the Southport Zoo. Chiefy's first roles were on BBC television, and Catgirl was his feature film debut. According to the AIP press book, Chiefy was completely dependent on humans for companionship and was taken for regular walks by his caregivers. An article published in the Nottingham Evening News on June 6, 1957 said Chiefy, star of the new movie Catgirl, would not be allowed in the studio for an appearance on BBC's Tonight program. Instead, his appearance was filmed in the courtyard of the studio in Kensington, with the camera operator shooting from behind a window in the studio. Frank Farrar appeared with Chiefy and told the reporter that he carries a loaded revolver in his pocket when working with Chiefy as insurance, but said Chiefy was a jungle-bred leopard with agreeable qualities. According to Farrar, Barbara Shelley spent hours getting to know Chiefy, and he is now quite docile with her. A photo published in the Nottingham Evening News the following week shows Shelley taking a stroll, Chiefy at her side on a lead, on the studio lot. However, there was an incident on set where a group of journalists came to see the animal and was terrified when, according to Barbara Shelley, Chiefy saw a man working up in the gantry and went berserk, chasing the journalists out of the studio. Catgirl was released on August 28, 1957, screening at the Apollo Drive-In Theater in Anaheim, California, as the co-feature on a double bill with The Amazing Colossal Man. Box Office Magazine suggested theater owners have a taxidermy leopard in the lobby or a cardboard facsimile that was poised to attack a young girl, portrayed by a department store mannequin, if they were using the taxidermy leopard, and to recreate the same scene in the bed of a truck to be driven around town, accompanied by signage promoting the film. Taglines for Catgirl include, "Cursed with the bloodlust of generations." "Screaming terror, to caress me is to tempt death." "See the beautiful young girl cursed with the soul of a leopard." "A madman controls a ferocious leopard in this spine-tingling story of a young girl trapped in a haunted house." That's not true. According to Alfred Shaughnessy, Barbara Shelley was lovely in the film and gave a most uninhibited and dramatic performance. Indeed, she was so good in it that I believe it condemned her to a long career in horror pictures. The New York Times review said, quote, "A superb performance by the smoldering Barbara Shelley and noirish direction by Alfred Shaughnessy, but it's hard to overlook the obvious parallels to Val Lewton's film Cat People, which outclasses it in every respect and makes the entire effort unnecessary." Variety said Catgirl lacks the ingredients to rise above a very minor entry in the exploitation market, whereas being packaged with Amazing Colossal Man, it is weak in all departments and must depend on its upper-bracketed companion picture for draw. The Lou Rusoff screenplay fails to fulfill the promise of his idea through blurry writing, and Alfred Shaughnessy's direction is too rambling and distorted to count for much. Shelley, in the title role, tries hard to give some semblance of reality, but doesn't stand a chance with what's handed her. The Monthly Film Bulletin wrote, "The film inevitably invites adverse comparison with the more successful Cat People, 1942. Nevertheless, it is not a negligible minor essay in the horror genre after a poor start. Barbara Shelley is a little heavy-handed, but nonetheless effective as Leonora." They also said that the film was let down by poor trick photography. Box Office Magazine said, "The story is acceptable, although it undertakes to blend two standard themes, hallowed by countless preceding chill dispensers. Moreover, there is no great lack of talent to be found among the troopers, individually or collectively. But of all the horrification, and there is plenty thereof to satisfy the seeker of chills,
doesn't seem to ring true when handled in the polite, restrained manner of overseas troopers. There will be some customers that are impressed by title roller Barbara Shelley. Considering the film was made on a comparatively limited budget, Lou Rusoff and Herbert Smith mounted it intelligently, while direction by Alfred Shaughnessy extracts everything possible from the unimaginative screenplay.
Review in Harrison's report said, handicapped by a script that is fussy and by dialogue that is frequently difficult to understand, this British-made horror melodrama is a rather weak picture of its kind and leaves much to be desired. Undiscriminating horror picture fans who are not too concerned about story values probably will find sufficient thrills and suspense in the action. Others, however, probably will find its story about a young girl whose soul enters the body of a man-killing leopard from time to time too vague to hold their interest. There is, of course, no comedy relief.
Hollywood Reporter said Catgirl was substandard even for quickie exploitation pictures.
A blurb in the Louisville Courier-Journal said Catgirl was about a problem child with a dual identity. The theme has long ago been explored by Robert Louis Stevenson with much better results.
Mike Connolly, in his syndicated column, wrote, double feature in the Los Angeles neighborhood theaters, The Catgirl and the Amazing Colossal Man. Wouldn't it save a lot of time, trouble, and toil if those two got married and had a fantastic, tremendous teenage cat boy?
No. Probably nobody seized on that idea.
Well, based on those reviews, I think it's safe to say that Catgirl didn't leave the critics purring with pleasure.
You're right, and I can kind of see why. Although I enjoyed the moody, atmospheric horror that was going on, I think there are two major flaws with this movie. And the first one is those insert shots that Paul Blaisdell filmed of her turning into a leopard. Because at no point in this movie is she ever physically attacking anybody or looking like a leopard, except for in that one shot. It never happens again. So I think that was completely unnecessary.
It's unnecessary, and it creates a huge plot hole in this film.
Right, because all the while we've been told that the leopard and she are now bonded and that they're the same entity, basically in two different bodies. But now we have her turning into a leopard for some reason. I guess it would maybe make sense if you think that she just imagined it, because no one else ever sees her looking that way. So maybe that was just a delusion on her part. But she's not crazy, she's just cursed. So that kind of falls apart.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that it would work, is to have that just be in her head, and we got to witness it because it's a movie. I can see where Nicholson and Arkoff were coming from. They wanted a monster movie, and they received a psychological thriller, basically. But this is another example of AIP sticking their hands where it didn't need to be and making a film inferior to what it could have been.
They do that a lot.
They really did.
Do you know my other problem with the movie?
Is it Brian?
Yes, absolutely. Wow, that character, there's so many problems with that guy. For one thing, he's like 20 years older than she is. And they went out when she was a girl and he was in middle age still.
The character is so bland.
Yeah, he's boring. And he's the only American in the entire movie. And he's dull as dishwater. And then finally, he's a terrible doctor. He's a terrible husband. He's a terrible friend. He's just bad at everything. His fault that all of this happens. Everything that goes wrong, aside from her being bonded with this leopard, is on him. And he takes no responsibility for it and walks away scot-free at the end. It's maddening. Did you hate him as much as I did?
I didn't find him likable. I think it may be another actor.
Someone charming?
Yes, someone like that who we could understand why Leonora is in love with this guy, because I certainly wasn't understanding it.
I couldn't even see what Dorothy saw in him. He basically assigned her to do something that only a trained professional should do, which is squire around this possibly insane woman for the day and note all her responses for him as if she were his nurse. I kind of thought that was going to be the case, that they actually worked together, but she's just a layperson. And he's putting his wife in danger like this. I would have divorced that guy so fast after the end of this movie.
And the character of Richard, who Leonora is married to, we know why he married her. He's in it for the money.
Right.
But we have no idea why she married him. She doesn't seem into him at all.
I guess she was lonely. She does confess that she married him because she needed somebody. She got dumped by Brian. Easy prey for the first opportunist who pretended to be in love with her.
I don't know. Leonora's constant indifference toward him. I don't know why she married him. I just don't understand.
Better somebody than nobody, which almost never turns out to be the case.
But she still basically had nobody because they weren't into each other.
No, he had never broken up with his old girlfriend, I guess.
I think Catgirl would have been a more intriguing film if Cat People didn't exist, because there are definitely a lot of parallels.
Mm-hmm.
And Cat People is one of my all-time favorite movies.
We should watch that.
And in fact, the scene at the end where Dorothy is walking down the sidewalk and they show her legs quickly walking along the sidewalk and being chased by Leonora, that's almost a direct ripoff from the swimming pool scene in Cat People when Jane Randolph is running from Simone.
I really did like Barbara Shelley in this, though. I thought she did a good job I think one of the reviews was like, well, they didn't give her very much to work with, but what she did have, she pulled off pretty well.
Well, I think she was really good. Whenever she's doing a scene with Dorothy, especially, you could feel what Dorothy's feeling with the looks and expressions that she's giving her.
She's always looming over Dorothy. She does a lot of cat-like stuff too.
Yeah, like when she's introduced to Dorothy and Leonora just looks at her and then walks away. Yeah. That's something cats do.
That made me laugh when you pointed that out, because you're right. Leonora was always on Dorothy, always right next to her, always looming over her. She's a good deal taller than Dorothy, and she seemed more physically imposing. That tension was very palpable.
There's a scene when she grabs the canary and the camera pans away to the door where Dorothy walks past the cage, and Leonora is standing in the corner, turned maybe a third of the way toward the camera, and she's got her hand on her belly, implying that she just ate this bird.
Yeah, her mouth is sealed shut. She doesn't want to spit out feathers.
And she's just got this wry smile on her face.
The cat that ate the canary. Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with the tension, and I thought they really would have improved this picture by keeping the psychological aspects of it and trying to steer away from this is a monster movie.
But it wouldn't be an AIP film, probably, if that were the case.
Especially not in 1957. That wasn't what they were putting out then, for the most part.
Yeah, it's too bad because that scene just kind of ruins the movie. That one scene with the transformation in the hospital, it doesn't fit.
That scene and then the end scene where basically Brian's like, well, if I tried to explain it to you, you wouldn't understand. And they're like, you're rich and white. I guess we're done with you here. We'll even clean your car. And there's like no consequences. That made me mad. But I mean, guess what were they going to do? He really did hit Leonora. He hit that leopard and that was her.
It was like they were joined souls for that moment, even though they were two separate entities. So part of her was in that cat and that's why she died, I guess. At least that's how I'm interpreting this. They don't really explain and it doesn't really need interpretation except that it's really the transformation scene that makes the whole thing not make sense.
Also, what happened to the leopard at the end of the movie? When Leonora feels the impact, she's not in front of the car.
Well, she's around the corner.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden, her raincoat's attached to the grill of the car and she's lying just a bit in front of it and the leopard is gone. Explain that.
If they had presented this like they do in the Shaggy Dog movie, where the leopard disappears and Leonora physically turns into the leopard, it would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Even the transformation scene would make sense, but that's not what they do here.
No, they try and write it off as first the leopard is Uncle Edmund, and then the leopard kills Uncle Edmund because its spirit has been transferred into Leonora. So now the leopard is Leonora, and it does her bidding until the leopard is killed, and then it becomes Leonora physically.
Yeah, it's a really complicated curse.
Yeah, they don't explain very well. It was kind of hilarious when Brian hits the leopard and it's literally stuck on his grill, like how people sometimes zip tie stuffed animals to the grill of their car. That's what it looked like. So there was a little comedy relief in this movie.
Well, it wasn't intentional.
No. But yeah, that stupid insert scene and then Brian being the least charismatic actor ever to be shown on film, my two big problems with the movie. But otherwise, I liked it.
I'm going to have to say the same two things because this is really close to being a very good movie. It's slow, but it's intentionally that way.
And it's short too. There's a lot happening in its 70 minutes. It's slow, meaning that it's a slow burn. It's a slow build.
Right.
It's not slow as in there's a lot of time when nothing happens.
It's not a horror movie. It's a thriller. Mm-hmm. And AIP tried to make a horror movie out of it. And
they tried to make a monster movie.
Kind of just ruined it.
Yeah. I think they were confused who they were marketing movies to. I don't think this went with Amazing Colossal Man at all. I bet we could find a movie that it would have been a better companion to, released around that time.
Yeah, maybe if they held on to it for a year and put it out with Blood of Dracula.
There you go.
That might have been a slightly better fit.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, did Catgirl leave you in a mood for purring or hissing? Let us know using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic.
No, I was going to do some purring and hissing, but I don't think we need to hear that. Well, there's only a couple scenes to hiss at in this movie. Otherwise, I think it's a decent movie, even good at times. I'm struggling with what grade to give it because I enjoyed watching this and I know it's flawed, but I really like the story, except for the end. And I think it's a good movie. I think that this could actually be an A movie, but we have to knock it down to an A- for the inclusion of the silly transformation scene and the casting of Robert Ayres as Brian. A really charming and capable character would have made all the difference in this movie. So it's either a high I or a low A, but I'm going to go with a low A. What do you think?
I'm going to agree on all those points. It's really that transformation scene that does not need to be there that hurts the film the most. And second, of course, is Robert Ayres. I just do not see what Leonora or Dorothy sees in him. He's condescending as a doctor and a husband. And I wouldn't say he was a particularly handsome man either. He's kind of bland in all aspects.
Yeah, his doctor technique was to just yell at Leonora that no, she wasn't experiencing this. He didn't do anything clinical with her. He gave her a sedative and yelled at her to stop being silly.
And even though I agree, I'm not going to give this an A-. This is an I for me. This is an intermediate. So we're going to split on this one.
I figured. I almost agree with you on the grade, but I'm going to factor in how much I enjoyed the rest of the movie and bump it up a little bit. But it is right on the cusp. Well, before we wrap, just want to tell any cat girls, cat boys, or cats of any gender listening, if you want to check out our catalog of 2.5 years of fantastic episodes of the American International Podcast, go to our website, AIPpod.com. There you'll find our entire library of episodes, as well as a contact form so you can tell us which movie you're most looking forward to us reviewing in the future. You can also find out a lot more about the movies we have covered, look at lobby cards, posters, trailers, and other advertising materials, find out where to watch these films so you can enjoy them on your own. And while you're on our site, consider going to our store, as a purchase of one of our items helps keep the podcast rolling every week. Just catwalk over to AIPpod.com.
So with that, we're going to dim the lights here at American International Podcast as we go out on the prowl for our next movie. Until then, I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.